I asked for $12,000 and was accused of being a bad wife, while my brother stole millions and walked free on $600,000 bail. My phone screamed for attention at 2:17 a.m., its blue light painting my face in the dark. With one horrifying news alert, I discovered my brother, the golden child, was a criminal. But what hit me harder than the betrayal was realizing my parents had just bet their entire life savings on him, while I'd always been the afterthought. That night, something inside me didn't just break. It hardened into a resolve I never knew I had. It was a barrage of texts. May, please call us. It's urgent. May, where are you? This is an emergency. Call now. My hands actually trembled as I scrolled through the increasingly frantic messages from my parents. The sheer panic felt so out of place in my meticulously organized Chicago condo. All clean lines and carefully chosen furniture. This place was my sanctuary, built far away from their drama. Then it appeared, a news alert. And there it was. Tyler's mugshot. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. My golden boy brother, the one they always put first, was staring back at me. His eyes were bloodshot, but that familiar half-smirk, the one that always worked on Mom and Dad, was still there. The smirk that screamed, I know I'll be rescued no matter what. The phone vibrated in my palm, and I answered before I could talk myself out of it. May, please, you have to help him. Mom's voice cracked, high-pitched and raw with fear. What's happening? I asked, even though deep down I already knew. Dad's voice cut in, rough and trembling. Tyler's been arrested. They're saying he stole millions from investors. It's all lies, of course. A misunderstanding. I stood, walking to my window and pressing my forehead against the cool glass, looking out at Chicago's glittering skyline. What exactly is he charged with? My voice was flat, detached. Wire fraud. Embezzlement. They're claiming $2.5 million. His voice broke in a way I'd never heard. The FBI was involved. May, you're a lawyer. You can fix this. Mom started sobbing in the background. A lawyer? Yes, but I'm a corporate finance attorney, not a criminal defense lawyer. That distinction didn't seem to matter to them. But you know people, Dad insisted, desperation thickening his tone. You have connections. This is your brother we're talking about. My brother. The same brother they moved heaven and earth for while I scraped by, fighting for every inch of ground. The memory slammed into me, unbidden and sharp. 6 months ago, standing in this exact spot, phone pressed to my ear. My voice had been steady despite the rising tide of panic inside me. The insurance won't cover all the water damage, I'd explained, trying to keep my desperation at bay. I need somewhere to stay while they repair the condo. Just alone until the claim processes. $12,000 would cover temporary housing. Mom's voice had been cool, detached, like I was a telemarketer. We'd love to help, but we just can't right now, dear. You understand. And then her parting shot, the one that still twisted in my gut. If you had focused on being a wife instead of a lawyer, you wouldn't be dealing with this alone. Caleb would have handled it. As if my ex-husband's affair with my colleague was somehow my fault for working too hard. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. I moved to my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Facebook. The evidence stared back at me. A punch to the gut. Photos of Mom and Dad, beaming in Florida with Tyler. The timestamp? 2 days after they'd claimed they couldn't help me. Their smiling faces on a chartered fishing boat, the caption gushing about celebrating Tyler's new business venture. The $60,000 they'd given him for his bar. The same bar that apparently fronted his entire fraud scheme. I closed the laptop with a quiet, deliberate click. For 33 years, I watched them drop everything for Tyler while I stood in the shadows. The state piano competition they missed for his baseball game. My law school graduation, which they left early because Tyler had a situation. Every achievement I made dismissed. Every need I had minimized. May, are you still there? Dad's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present crisis. I paced my apartment, my attorney brain whirring, calculating. Wire fraud. $2.5 million. Federal charges. Potential sentences. My jaw was tight. I'll come tomorrow. I heard myself say the words, a commitment I hadn't fully made. Oh, thank God. Mom breathed, the relief palpable. We knew you'd help. Tyler always said you'd come through if things got bad. That That was the moment. The rage bubbled up inside me, surprising me with its intensity. They hadn't asked about my life, my work, whether I could even leave. Just the expectation that I'd drop everything again for their golden son. I haven't said I'll help yet. I clarified, my voice cool and icy shield. I said, I'll come. We'll discuss options when I get there. But that's all I can promise right now. I ended the call before they could protest. Dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as I closed my suitcase. My face was set with a new resolve. The woman in the mirror looked different, somehow still me, but with something harder, something steely in her eyes. I had spent my entire life trying to earn a fraction of the love they freely gave Tyler. No more. I'd go to Hartford, but this time it would be on my terms. If they wanted my help, they'd have to face some uncomfortable truths. Starting with the fact that their golden son wasn't just tarnished. He was a criminal. And I was done being the afterthought. The next morning, my childhood home in Hartford loomed before me like a museum dedicated solely to Tyler Evans. I stood frozen in the entryway, the silence echoing in the halls. A gallery of his life surrounded me. Baseball trophies gleamed from every shelf, reflecting the morning light. Photos chronicled his progression from chubby-cheeked toddler to handsome young entrepreneur. Conspicuously absent any tangible evidence I had ever existed. May, thank God you're here. Mom rushed toward me, arms outstretched, but stopped short of an actual embrace. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face makeup-free, worn with worry. Dad hovered behind her, looking a decade older than when I'd last seen him. I set my suitcase down with a deliberate thud, the sound echoing a hollow victory. Where are the case documents? I asked, cutting straight to the point. In the dining room, Dad said, his voice raspy. But first, we need to tell you what we've done. The dining room table held the answer. Papers spread across its oak surface like a crime scene. Bank statements, court filings, a property deed with a bright yellow post-it note stuck to it for Tyler's bail. You put up the house? My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Mom wrung her hands. $600,000. The judge set bail this morning. Jesus Christ, I whispered, dropping into a chair, scanning documents with growing disbelief. Wire transfers, shell companies, investor lists. The money trail was painfully obvious. Your brother made some poor decisions, Dad tried, his voice weak. But he's not a criminal. I held up a bank statement. This shows systematic fraud over 18 months. That's not a poor decision. That's a felony. He was desperate, Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. His business was failing. A notation caught my eye. A transfer from my parents' account to Tyler's bar 4 months ago. Not the $60,000 I'd known about. An additional $45,000. My head snapped up. You knew. I looked from Mom to Dad, my gaze burning. You knew something was wrong with his finances months ago. The guilty exchange of glances between them confirmed everything. The air grew thick with unspoken betrayal. I pushed back from the table and walked to the living room, drawn by muscle memory to the mantel. My law school graduation photo, usually tucked proudly next to family portraits, was missing. In its place, a framed article about Tyler's bar opening. We needed to make room for newer photos, Mom explained, appearing behind me, her voice a weak excuse. My phone buzzed. Lucas. I stepped onto the front porch for privacy. The cool autumn air. A welcome contrast to the stifling tension inside. How bad is it? He asked, his voice a bomb after hours of family tension. They used their house for bail. They knew about financial problems months ago and said nothing. And apparently, I've been erased from the family history. I swallowed the lump in my throat, almost choking me. I'm sorry, May. His voice carried the weight of understanding, not pity. Remember your boundaries. You don't owe them a rescue. I know. I watched a neighbor walking a dog across the street, the normalcy feeling utterly surreal. How's your surgery schedule? Booked solid. But I can fly out this weekend if you need me. Unlike my parents, Lucas never made me ask twice. I'll let you know. Love you. Love you too. Stay strong. I made another call. This one to Victoria Chin, my mentor at the firm. Her advice was characteristically direct. Don't represent him. Recommend a criminal attorney. Keep professional distance. Back inside, I found my parents huddled at the kitchen counter, whispering like guilty teenagers. They straightened when they saw me. The prosecutor called, Dad said, avoiding my gaze. Tyler's first hearing is Tuesday. If Tyler violates bail conditions, you lose the house. I leaned against the doorframe, my voice flat. Do you understand that? Mom nodded miserably, her eyes welling up. We had no choice. What about your retirement savings? Dad looked away, running a hand through his thinning hair. Most of it went to his previous ventures. The magnitude of their financial sacrifice, their utter vulnerability to Tyler's manipulation, crashed over me. Decades of blind favoritism had led them to this precipice. I thought of my own careful financial planning, the emergency fund I'd built after they refused to help me. The irony burned. My phone chimed with a text from the county prosecutor's office, confirming tomorrow's jail visit. I stood taller, chin raised, a steely resolve hardening my features. I've made some decisions. Their faces lifted with hope, so naked it was almost painful to witness. I'll recommend a good criminal defense attorney. I won't give you money. And we all, including Tyler, will attend family therapy. Mom's expression crumpled, her face contorting with disbelief. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me that compares to what you've done for Tyler? The question hung in the air like smoke choking the room. Dad's face flushed with anger, then drained to a weary resignation. We don't have much choice, do we? He mumbled. You always have choices. You've just made bad ones. I turned toward the stairs. I need to prepare for tomorrow's jail visit. May. Dad called after me, his voice a desperate plea. He's still your brother. I paused, not turning around. Yes, he is. And that's the only reason I'm here. In my childhood bedroom, preserved like a time capsule from high school, I spread my notes across the twin bed. The prosecutorial strategy was clear. The evidence substantial. The best outcome for Tyler would be a plea deal, but it would still mean prison time. I closed my notepad and stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling I'd gazed at as a teenager, planning my escape from Tyler's shadow. The anger I'd carried for decades had crystallized into something harder, cleaner. Tomorrow, I would face my golden brother in his tarnished reality. And for the first time in our lives, I would be the one holding all the cards. The next day, after meeting the prosecutor, I went to the county jail. The visiting room assaulted my senses before I even sat down. Institutional beige walls, pockmarked with scuffs and mysterious stains. Overhead fluorescent lights buzzed with an irritating persistence, casting everyone in a sickly pallor. I adjusted my position on the metal chair, its coldness seeping through my skirt. A security door clanged open, the sound echoing through the cavernous space, mingling with distant shouts and the constant jingle of keys. The correctional officer nodded toward me, his expression professionally blank. Visitor for Evans, he called out, voice flat. I straightened my spine, feeling the familiar courtroom posture take over. Shoulders back, chin level, face composed. The file folder in front of me contained pages I'd already memorized. Bank statements, forged documents, investor complaints. My fingers briefly trembled against the manila surface before I forced them still. Tyler appeared in the doorway, and for a moment, I barely recognized my brother. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame, making him appear smaller somehow. His usually styled hair fell limply across his forehead, and stubble darkened his jaw. But as he approached, his trademark smirk slid into place. The same expression he wore when he was 16 and caught stealing Dad's car, when he dropped out of college, when he borrowed my credit card number for an online gambling site. He dropped into the seat across from me. The plexiglass barrier between us, scratched so thoroughly it distorted his features. His eyes, bloodshot, but still carrying that familiar cockiness, met mine. So, big sister lawyer finally shows up, he drawled, leaning back as if we were meeting for coffee. Took you long enough. I didn't respond immediately, instead opening the folder with deliberate slowness. The officer stood at attention near the wall, watching us with practiced indifference. You look terrible, I finally said, my voice neutral, detached. Tyler snorted. Not all of us get to sleep in our 1,000-thread count sheets in our fancy Chicago condos. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. You've got it all, haven't you? career money, a home that wasn't underwater last year. What more do you want? The barb about my flooded condo landed exactly as intended. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but kept my expression impassive, the way I would facing an opposing counsel. Let's talk about your situation, I said, tapping the folder. Wire fraud, embezzlement, $2.5 million missing from investor accounts. I slid a document toward the glass, including $850,000 from the Hendersons' retirement fund. The Hendersons, Mom and Dad's neighbors for 20 years. The same people who brought casseroles when Mom had her hip surgery. Tyler's smirk faltered. It's a misunderstanding. Is it? I flipped to another page. Because these bank records show systematic transfers from your business accounts to offshore holdings. Another page turned. And these show withdrawals coinciding with your trips to Vegas. His face darkened. You've been talking to the prosecutor. Someone had to. I met his gaze directly. Mom and Dad were too busy pledging their house as your property bond to actually understand what you've done. The smirk disappeared entirely now, replaced by something harder. You always were so perfect, weren't you? Never made a mistake. Never needed anything. I laughed. The sound was sharp against the institutional hush. That's what they told you. That I never needed anything. They gave you everything. Harvard Law School? Connections. I cut him off. I worked 2 jobs through undergrad and took out $200,000 in student loans for Harvard. The connections, those were mine too. Ones I made while you were blowing through your 3rd business venture with their money. Tyler's eyes flickered with uncertainty for the first time. They said. I know what they said. My voice remained level, even as anger pulsed beneath it. They told you I was fine on my own while they wrote checks for your rent. Your car. Your bar. The same bar you used to run your little scheme. His gaze darted toward the guard before returning to me, his voice dropping. You have to help me, May. You know people. You can make this go away. I pulled out a sheet of paper. I've already talked to the prosecutor about a plea deal. His eyes widened, genuine surprise replacing the practiced charm. You have 18 months federal time with good behavior. 3 years supervised release. 6 months house arrest after prison. Full restitution. Tyler blinked rapidly, processing. 18 months? I can't. It's that or risk 8 to 10 years at trial. I closed the folder. The evidence is overwhelming, Tyler. Even Mom and Dad have figured that out by now. Just. He leaned forward, palms flat against the counter, his voice taking on the wheedling tone that always worked on our parents. Remember when we were kids? How I covered for you when you snuck out to that concert junior year. You owe me. The manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. I was covering for you.
At Christmas dinner, I thanked my aunt for the keychain she sent me for my birthday. She stopped stirring and replied,
Well, what about
I
when?
bought you a $400,000
I held up my
apartment.
hand.
Can you imagine thanking your aunt for a small,
It's about
thoughtful
$2.5
birthday
million
gift,
you stole
only
from
for her
people
to
who
look at
trusted
you, dead
including
serious,
family friends.
and say,
Something
I bought you a
shifted in his expression,
$400,000
the
apartment.
facade cracking
The
further.
keychain was a freebie.
He leaned closer to the
The
glass.
room went
his
silent.
voice dropping
My
to a
entire
whisper.
family's
Mom and
faces
Dad
turned
will lose
white as
everything
paper.
because of me.
Because in
For
that
the first
moment,
time, I glimpsed
the
something
elaborate,
genuine in his
twisted
eyes.
lie they'd all
Not
been living was
calculation or
about to
charm,
explode.
But actual fear.
My name is
Not
Lydia,
for himself,
and
but
I'm
for our
31.
parents. The
This past
revelation
Christmas
didn't
dinner
move me
was
the way it
supposed to
might
be
have once.
perfect.
You should
My
have thought about
stepmother's
that before
best
you used
china,
their good name
candles
to lure
flickering,
investors.
the scent of
I
her
was
famous
going to
honey
pay it
glazed
all
ham
back.
filling the dining
His
room.
voice caught.
Everyone was
The market
laughing,
turned.
passing
And then
dishes,
save it for your
playing the
statement to
perfect
the
family.
judge.
My
I stared,
dad was
gathering my
carving the
papers.
turkey with his usual
That's it?
precision.
You're just
My
leaving.
19-year-old
Panic etched
half-sister,
into his voice.
Emma, was
I looked
scrolling
down
through
at
her
him,
phone,
seeing clearly the
even
boy
though
who was
phones
given
were
everything
supposedly
and
banned
still
at dinner.
wanted more.
And my
You're
stepmother,
pathetic.
Linda,
His mouth
was
opened in
directing
shock.
traffic like the
No
general
one,
she is.
certainly not our
And there's
parents,
me,
had ever spoken
sitting in
to
the
him
same
this way.
spot I've occupied
May
for
wait.
15 years
I
since
turned
Dad
my
remarried.
back, nodding
Right
to
next
the
to little
officer
Aunt
that I was
Margaret,
finished.
who flew in from
May.
Phoenix as a
Tyler
surprise.
called after me,
I was
his
genuinely
voice
happy
bouncing
to
off
see
the
her.
concrete walls.
She's the only
You can't
person
just
in this
walk
family
away.
who's ever
We're
treated me
family.
like I
The
actually
heavy
belong.
security door swung
Aunt
shut behind
Margaret,
me,
I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Thank you so much for the keychain you sent for my birthday. It's beautiful. I carry it everywhere. I pulled it from my purse. A simple silver chain with a small heart charm. Nothing fancy, but coming from her, it meant everything. The room went quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of people enjoying good food, but the kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. Aunt Margaret's bowl covered halfway to her mouth, her eyes narrowing as she looked around the table. Dad stopped carving mid-slice. Linda's smile froze like it's been painted on. Keychain. Aunt Margaret's voice was dangerously calm. She sets down her fork with deliberate precision. Lydia, sweetheart, what keychain? That's when I realized something was very wrong. The way Emma suddenly sat up straight, the way Linda's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass, the way Dad cleared his throat like he was about to deliver bad news. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. To understand why this moment felt like a bomb going off, you need to know what my family is really like. And trust me, it's not the Norman Rockwell painting they pretend to be. Growing up as the stepdaughter in this house was like being a permanent guest who'd overstayed their welcome. My mom died when I was 7, and Dad remarried Linda 2 years later. Linda brought her own special brand of subtle cruelty disguised as concern for my well-being. While Emma got designer clothes for school shopping, I got carefully selected items from the clearance rack. We want to teach Lydia the value of money, Linda would explain to relatives, as if frugality was a character-building exercise meant only for me. When Emma wanted a car for her 16th birthday, she got a brand new Honda Civic with a bow on top. When I turned 16, Linda suggested I could borrow her old minivan when it wasn't needed for family errands, which turned out to be approximately never. The pattern was always the same. Emma's needs came first. Emma's wants were necessities, and my requests were luxuries we couldn't afford. When I wanted to take art classes, Dad said we needed to prioritize practical skills. When Emma wanted piano lessons, they hired a private instructor who came to the house twice a week. College was where the inequality became impossible to ignore. I spent my senior year of high school working at a movie theater to save money, wrote dozens of scholarship essays, and chose my state school specifically because I could afford the in-state tuition. Emma, on the other hand, applied to 5 private colleges with application fees that cost more than I made in a week at the theater. But here's the thing that really got to me. They acted like this was normal. Like treating their daughters completely differently was just natural family order. When relatives commented on the disparity, Linda would smile sweetly and say, each girl has different needs. Lydia is so independent and responsible. Emma needs more guidance.
Despite his
Translation, Lydia can figure it out herself. Emma deserves to be taken care of. The only person who ever called them out on this was Aunt Margaret, my dad's sister. She was the one who sent me graduation gifts, who remembered my birthday every year, who asked about my life like it actually mattered. She never had children of her own, but she treated me like I was precious, which, after growing up in this house, felt revolutionary. When I graduated college with my nursing degree, magna cum laude, and debt-free, thanks to scholarships and working through school, the family celebration consisted of dinner at Applebee's. When Emma graduated high school with a C+ average, they threw a party that cost more than my car. By the time I moved out, I'd learned not to expect much from them. Christmas and birthday gifts were practical items I needed anyway. Holiday celebrations were events I attended but didn't really belong to. Family vacations were things they planned around my schedule, not something they invited me to join. Which is why Aunt Margaret was so important to me. She was the only person who made me feel like family. By 25, I'd built a life that looked nothing like theirs. I was a single mom working as a pediatric nurse, living in a small apartment with my 4-year-old son, Danny. His father had disappeared the moment he found out about the pregnancy, leaving me to figure everything out alone, which, honestly, was pretty much what I expected by then. The apartment was tiny but clean, with hammer-down furniture and toys from garage sales. Danny didn't care that his high chair came from Goodwill or that his bedroom was really just a corner of the living room with a colorful curtain divider. He was happy, healthy, and loved. That's all that mattered to me. My family's relationship with Danny was complicated. They claimed to love him. Of course, Linda would post pictures of him on Facebook with captions about being the world's best grandma. But when it came to actual help, like babysitting so I could pick up extra shifts, they were mysteriously always busy. Emma, now in college at a school that cost more per year than I made, would occasionally drop by to play with Danny for an hour before complaining about how exhausting children were. Dad would visit monthly, bringing small toys and staying just long enough to feel like he'd done his grandparent duty. The one person who showed up consistently was Aunt Margaret. Every few weeks, she'd drive 2 hours from her house to spend the weekend with us. She'd arrive with homemade cookies, new books for Danny, and genuine interest in our lives. She'd babysit without being asked, help with household projects, and treat both Danny and Milik when Danny got sick with pneumonia at 3 years old, requiring a week-long hospital stay. She took time off work to help. She slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair, brought me changes of clothes, and held Danny when I needed to shower or eat. My own father visited twice during that week, both times for less than an hour. That's when I realized who my real family was. It wasn't the people who shared my last name or lived in the house I grew up in. It was the person who showed up when things got hard. Last year, when Aunt Margaret called to tell me she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer, I didn't hesitate. What do you need?
And what about what
I asked immediately. When are your appointments? Who's driving you to treatments?
Dad sat down the spreadsheet.
The answer,
for the first
predictably,
time in my life,
was nobody.
Genuinely at a
Dad
loss.
was too busy with
Dr.
work.
Sanderson leaned
Linda
forward,
had a prior
her
commitment
voice
with
gentle
Emma's
but firm.
college activities.
This is good.
Emma was,
hard but good.
of course,
Let's talk about
too
what
young
each
to
of you
handle
needed
such
that you
serious
didn't
matters.
receive.
So,
as the session
I became
continued,
Margaret's
I outlined my
transportation,
conditions.
her advocate,
I will recommend
her support
attorneys.
system.
I will consult
Twice a
on the
week
case.
for 6 months.
I will not pay
I
a dime
loaded
toward
Danny into
Tyler's
his car
defense,
seat after my
and we
shift
will
and
continue
drove 2
therapy.
hours to Margaret's
All
house.
of us, including
Then another
Tyler,
hour to the
once
cancer
he can
center.
participate.
3 hours
After
for treatment.
Dr. Sanderson
Another
left,
hour back
I
to her
stood
house.
in the living room alone.
And 2 hours home.
From my briefcase,
Danny
I
learned to
removed my
entertain
childhood
himself
piano
quietly in
competition
hospital
trophy,
waiting rooms,
the state championship
coloring in
my
books
parents
that
missed for
Margaret
Tyler's
bought him.
baseball game.
During the worst
With
of the
deliberate
chemotherapy,
movements,
I'd
placed
stay
it on the
overnight,
mantel directly
making
beside
sure she
Tyler's
ate,
photographs.
took her
It
medications,
looked small there,
and didn't
dwarfed
fall.
by his larger,
Danny would
shinier
curl up
rewards,
next to her
but
on
it
the
was a
couch,
start.
his
A
small hand
declaration.
patting her
On
bald
Thursday,
head gently.
the federal courthouse
Aunt Maggie
loomed like
is
a
brave,
stone monument to
he'd whisper to me.
consequences.
Yes,
Reporters clustered
she
at
is.
the entrance.
I'd agree.
Cameras
And she
poised like
deserved
predators
better from her
sensing blood in
family
the
than
water.
what she was
I
getting.
adjusted my charcoal
The
suit
night
jacket and
Margaret
straightened
finished
my
her
spine.
last round of chemo
Acutely
was one
aware
of the
how my
best nights
parents
of my
shuffled
life.
behind me,
We sat in
looking
her
like
living
shrunken
room,
versions of
Danny
themselves.
asleep between us,
Remember what we
and she
discussed?
grabbed my hand with
I
more
murmured,
strength
not
than she'd
turning
had in
back.
months.
Let the
You
attorney
saved my
handle
life,
everything.
she said
Mom's
quietly.
hand fluttered toward
Not
mine,
just
but
medically,
didn't quite make contact.
Oh,
May, please.
your nursing
There
skills
must be
certainly
something
helped.
else you could.
You showed up when
No,
everyone else had
the word
excuses.
came out sharper
You
than
made me
intended.
feel loved
I
when I
softened
felt
my
forgotten.
tone. We've been over
I squeezed
this.
her hand back.
The criminal defense
Your
attorney
family,
is experienced
real family.
with federal cases.
This is what people
Dad
do for
cleared
each
his
other.
throat.
Her
Always the
eyes
buffer.
filled with tears.
Your mother just
Your
met.
father called
I
me
know what
twice
she
during
meant.
the entire 6
I paused
months.
at the courthouse
Twice.
doors,
Linda
watching the
sent a
marshals
card.
lead a handcuffed
Emma
figure
texted
up the
occasionally.
stairs. Tyler.
She shook her head in
His
disgust.
orange jumpsuit had
But
been
you,
replaced by an
working
ill-fitting gray
full-time,
suit that hung
raising
from
a
his
child
frame.
alone,
The
you
trademark
found a
smirk
way
was
to be
gone,
here every single
replaced by
time I
something
needed you.
unfamiliar on his face.
The anger in her
Raw
voice
fear.
was new.
A reporter
Margaret
thrust a
had always been
microphone toward
diplomatic
us.
about family
Mr.
conflicts.
and Mrs. Evans,
The
how do you
peacekeeper
feel
who
about your
smoothed over
son?
uncomfortable
I stepped
moments.
between them, my
But
voice
cancer,
cutting through the noise.
it seemed,
No
had
comment
burned
at
away
this
her
time.
patience for pretense.
Inside, the polished
After
marble
Richard
floors
died,
echoed with our
she
footsteps.
continued, referring
The
to her
courtroom
husband
doors
who'd
loomed
passed
ahead,
3 years
and my
earlier.
stomach
I
tightened.
thought about changing my
33
will.
years, I'd
He
lived
left
in
me
Tyler's
well
shadow.
provided for,
Today, that
and we
shadow
never
had
had children.
substance and weight,
I'd always
as heavy
planned
as
to
the
leave
oak
everything
doors
to
we
your
pushed
father,
through. The
assuming
courtroom
he'd take
smelled
care
of
of Emma
furniture
and help you as
polish,
needed.
old paper, and
But this
palpable
experience has
anxiety.
shown me who actually
Attorney James
deserves my
Whitfield rose
consideration.
from the defense table as we
I
approached,
felt uncomfortable
his
with the
silver hair
direction
catching
of the
fluorescent
conversation.
light. May,
Margaret, you don't need
he
to.
extended
Yes,
his hand.
I do.
Everything's in place
Her
for
voice
the
was
plea
firm.
agreement.
You
Mom
need to
grabbed my
understand
arm, her
something,
eyes wide with
Lydia.
frantic hope.
I've been watching
Plea
your
agreement?
family dynamic
But
for
what
years,
about a trial?
making
You
excuses,
always said if
hoping
someone is
things would
innocent.
improve. They haven't.
He's not innocent,
If anything,
Mom,
they've
I
gotten
whispered,
worse.
guiding her to the bench
She was
behind
right.
the defense table.
Even during her cancer
That's
treatment,
why we're here.
when you'd think
Tyler's
family
eyes
would
found
rally
mine as
together,
the marshals
the
led him to
patterns
his
remained the
seat.
same.
Something
Dad would
passed
call me for
between us,
updates on
a
Margaret's
current of
condition rather than
recognition,
calling
of
her
finality.
directly. Linda
He'd
would ask
spent
me
his
to
whole
relay
life
messages
believing himself
instead
the
of picking up the
exception to
phone
every
herself.
rule.
They
Today
treated
he
me
learned
like a
otherwise.
communication
The
service
bailiff called
between
the
them
court
and
to
Margaret,
order. Judge
rather than
Harmon
recognizing
entered,
that
her
I was the
black
one
robes
actually
flowing with
caring for
authority.
her.
We rose.
When Margaret's hair
As we
started
settled
growing
back
back,
into our seats,
her
Mom
energy
leaned
returned.
forward, her
She
voice a
began making
desperate
plans.
hiss. May
I'm
you
going
could
to
still
travel,
talk to the judge.
she announced
You're
one
a
afternoon.
respected attorney.
All those places
Explain it was
Richard and I
all a
talked about visiting
misunderstanding.
but never
That
got
would
to.
be ethical
I'm
misconduct.
starting with Europe in the
I
spring.
whispered back, my
3
gaze
months
fixed
of seeing
forward.
everything
And
I've
it
always
wouldn't
wanted to
work.
see.
Dad joined
I was
in,
thrilled
his
for
voice
her.
low.
After
But your
everything she'd been
connections
through,
are not
she
for
deserved
sale.
every moment
I
of
met his
joy
gaze.
and adventure she could
Not
find.
even for Tyler.
But I was also
Tyler
going to
turned,
miss her
his
terribly.
eyes pleading from the
Margaret
defense
was my
table.
anchor in the
I
family,
gave him a small
the
head
person
shake.
who reminded
The
me
weight of
that
his
I was worthy of
expectations,
love
my
and
parents'
consideration.
desperate hope,
Before
pressed
I
against my
go,
chest.
she said,
But I'd come
I
too
want to
far
do
to
something
cave now.
special for your
The
birthday.
prosecutor stood,
28 is a big year.
compact woman whose
Starting
plain
your late
appearance belied the
20s.
steel in her
I have
voice.
plans.
Your Honor,
My
the United
birthday
States
was in
has evidence
October,
proving beyond
and Margaret
reasonable
left
doubt
for her
that the
European
defendant,
adventure right
Tyler
after my
Evans,
birthday in late
systematically
October.
defrauded
She'd
investors
beaten
of
cancer,
approximately
and she was
$2.5
finally
million
living the life
through
she
wire
dreamed
fraud
of.
and false
Her
statements.
postcards arrived
She outlined
weekly,
the scheme in
filled with
clinical
stories
detail,
of art galleries
but it
in
was when she
Paris,
called the first
beaches in
victim that
Greece,
the oxygen
and
seemed to
pasta in
drain from
Italy.
the room.
She
An
sounded
elderly
happier than
man
I'd
with
ever
gnarled
heard her.
hands gripped the
3
witness
days
stand.
before my
I
birthday, a
invested my
delivery truck
retirement
pulled up
savings
to my
because he was
apartment
Richard
building.
Evans' son,
I wasn't
he
expecting
said,
anything,
his voice
so I was
quavering.
confused when the
Said
driver
his
handed
father
me a
taught him
clipboard to
everything
sign.
about business
But there it
ethics.
was,
Dad
my
flinched
name and
beside
address.
me.
A
Mom
package from
stifled a
Margaret with
sob.
a European
Another
postmark.
victim followed.
Inside was a
middle-aged
small
woman
jewelry
whose
box
children's
containing
college
a
funds
simple
had
silver
vanished into
keychain with a
Tyler's
heart charm
scheme.
and a note.
He showed
Happy
me family
birthday,
photos,
sweetheart.
she testified,
This is
tears
just a
in her
little
eyes.
something to hold
Said
you
I
over
could
until I
trust
get
the
back
Evans
and give you
name.
your real present.
I watched my
All
parents'
my
faces
love,
as
Aunt
understanding
Margaret.
finally dawned.
It
Their
wasn't
golden
much,
son hadn't just
but knowing she
tarnished
thought of
himself.
me while exploring
He dragged
ancient
their
ruins and
reputation
famous
through the mud,
museums made it
used their
perfect.
good name as
I
bait to
attached
lure
it to my
trusting
keys
people into
immediately
his
and
trap.
carried it everywhere,
When Tyler stood
just as I
before
told the
judge,
family
he
at
seemed
Christmas
smaller
dinner.
somehow.
What
All
I
the
didn't know
bluster
then was
gone.
that this
The
small
court accepts
keychain
your
was
plea of
meant to be an
guilty to one
afterthought,
count of wire
a
fraud,
placeholder for
Judge
something
Harmon
much,
stated.
much
In
bigger.
accordance with the plea
October
agreement,
28th,
I sentence you to
my
18
birthday,
months in federal
came
prison,
and went
followed
quietly.
by 3 years
I
of
worked a double
supervised
shift at the
release,
hospital because
including 6
holiday
months
pay
of home
helped with
detention
Christmas.
and restitution payments to begin immediately upon release. The gavel struck with finality. Tyler glanced back at us, his expression a complex mixture of resentment and grudging respect. When his eyes met mine, I gave him a slight nod. This outcome, 18 months instead of the potential 10 or more years, represented the best possible scenario given the overwhelming evidence. Outside the courthouse, the reporters descended like vultures. Microphones thrust toward us from all directions. Dad stepped forward, clearing his throat, ready to make excuses. My son made a terrible mistake, but I moved beside him, cutting off what I knew would be a string of justifications. The Evans family acknowledges the harm done to the victims. I stated clearly, my voice ringing with authority. Tyler is taking responsibility for his actions. The plea agreement includes full restitution to those affected by his crimes. Dad blinked at me, momentarily stunned by my intervention. Mom's hand found mine, her fingers trembling. The simple gesture contained volumes, acknowledgement perhaps, that I was no longer the afterthought. No further questions, I added, turning away from the cameras. We walked down the courthouse steps. The autumn sun felt warm against our faces despite the chill in the air. For the first time in memory, my parents followed several steps behind me, their footsteps hesitant on the stone stairs. I didn't look back. The weight on my shoulders felt different now. Not the crushing burden of being overlooked, but the exhilarating responsibility of being seen, of being finally heard. A year later, I arranged crimson chrysanthemums in a crystal vase, sunlight catching the diamond on my left hand. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and sage, a warmth that extended beyond temperature. Lucas moved behind me, his surgeon's hands confident as he basted the turkey. Your parents should be here any minute, he said, pressing a kiss to my temple. Nervous? Surprisingly, no. I adjusted a bloom that refused to cooperate. It feels different now. The doorbell chimed through my Chicago home, my sanctuary that now truly felt like one. I smoothed my burgundy sweater and opened the door to faces that had changed in subtle ways. Mom's hair showed more silver, Dad's shoulders less rigid. "May," Mom said, offering a leather portfolio I recognized immediately. "I found your old piano music in the attic. Thought you might want it back." "We drove past your firm on the way in," Dad added, handing Lucas a bottle of wine. "That Johnson case you mentioned last month? Saw in the Tribune you won. Spectacular work." I accepted both the music and compliment with equal surprise, guiding them into my living room where photographs, mine, Lucas's, and yes, even a few of Tyler's, shared equal space on floating shelves. Over appetizers, Mom mentioned their recent move. "The smaller place suits us better. Less to maintain now that we're fully retired. Your father volunteers 3 days a week at the community college," she continued, pride evident. "Financial literacy for first-generation college students. Someone should have taught us the same lessons years ago," Dad said with a self-deprecating smile. "Might have made retirement more comfortable." When Lucas asked about Tyler, there was a momentary pause, but not the immediate family mobilization his name once triggered. "His letters come regularly now," Dad said. "The last one had actual questions about your work, May." Mom added, "Said he might have some insights to offer when he's out next spring." We moved to the dining table, laden with dishes Lucas and I had prepared together. Crystal glasses caught the light from tapered candles. The contrast to last Thanksgiving, spent alone in my office reviewing contracts, couldn't be starker. "Before we eat," Lucas suggested, "maybe we could each share something we're grateful for this year." When my turn arrived, I let the silence linger, looking at these faces gathered around my table. Lucas, whose patience showed me what true partnership means. My parents, who finally saw me. Even Tyler's absence felt like progress. A family dynamic rebalanced. "I'm thankful for second chances," I said. "And hard truths." Lucas squeezed my hand under the table, a private acknowledgement of the journey. Later, as Mom helped me pack leftovers, she paused, her eyes moist. "I always thought you were strong, that you didn't need us the way Tyler did." Her voice cut. I was wrong about so many things. It was a quiet apology, a long-awaited acknowledgement. After dinner, I mentioned my plans for a legal foundation focused on family financial abuse cases. Instead of redirecting the conversation to Tyler's situation, Dad asked thoughtful questions about structure and funding. When we took a family photo for this year's holiday card, I noticed how naturally we arranged ourselves, no longer orbiting around a golden sun, but standing as equals. Night fell early this deep in November. After my parents retired to the guest room and Lucas showered, I stood alone at my living room window. Snow began to fall, delicate flakes illuminated by streetlights. My reflection in the glass showed the woman I'd become, overlaid with shadows of who I once was, the afterthought daughter, forever seeking validation. I placed my palm against the cool glass, watching frost form around the edges of my fingertips. "Some things break," I whispered to no one and everyone. "But sometimes when things break, it's just so you can finally put them back together in a way that truly fits you." This journey was brutal, but it was mine. I finally found my voice, my place, and my family on my terms. Have you ever had to choose between what's easy and what's right, especially when it comes to family? What was your breaking point? Let me know in the comments below.